Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to the Thanksgiving edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I hope you and the family have had an enjoyable evening, joining turkey and all the fixings. So we're going to let you know a little bit about what's happening here on the sports scene here in New Orleans. We'll cover the Saints, LSU, and Tulane tonight. Tonight's guest on our panel, Les East of The Advocate, and also Brian Ali Walsh of SportsNola.com. Gentlemen, thanks for being with us. I always like to start the show off, kind of let the audience know a little bit about what you guys are involved in. Les, welcome back. And of course, you're writing for The Advocate. Tell us a little bit about what's going on there.
Well, it's been a fairly busy news week or two up in Baton Rouge. I think we'll probably get to some of that a little bit later in the show. But also we have the Bayou Classic, of course, being Thanksgiving weekend. Southern and Grambling in the Superdome on Saturday. A couple of changes this year. It'll be a 4 o'clock kickoff instead of 1:30, and it'll be on NBC Sports instead of NBC. So if people are looking for it on Saturday, that's when and where you need to look. Should be a good game. Grambling's going to the SWAC championship game next week. They ended Southern's 2-year reign as the West Division champion already. But it should be a good game. Two really good teams, two high-scoring offenses. I think it'll be an old-fashioned Southern Grambling shootout in the Bayou Classic.
As far as the overall game itself, strengths and weaknesses of Southern and Grambling?
Well, they're both really good on offense, and they're both inconsistent but capable on defense. But I think the offenses are going to take over. Two really good quarterbacks. Jonathan Williams, fifth-year senior at Grambling, who's in graduate school already, is maybe the Offensive Player of the Year in the SWAC. Austin Howard, just a sophomore from West St. John at Southern. He was Southern's MVP in the game last year, freshman of the year in the league, and he's had a really good season, especially the last two games. So, and Leonard Tillery, the running back for Southern, and Willie Quinn, the punt returner, of course, are two guys who have made big plays all year long.
Now, since 1974. Long time. Of course, I can remember when it started in Tulane Stadium. That is a long time ago. Brian Ali Walsh, welcome back to the show. Always great to have you. Tell us a little bit about what you're involved in. I know you got a lot of things going on. Tell the folks where they can find you.
Well, I thought when he was going to giving a synopsis of the game, I thought he was going to talk about the bands at halftime, that steals the show. Plus, the over-under for this game is what, 4 hours generally, the broadcast?
4 hours would be a quick game. With the bands at halftime and all of the passing and the TV.
It's incredible, but it is quite a show. Eric, always a pleasure to be back with you and to share a dais with our good buddy Les. Doing a variety of things, working for Biloxi Sun Herald, writing a twice-a-week column for them, stringing for his fine paper, The Advocate, working for USA Today, covering the NFC South, SportsNola.com, a TV gig there too. So I'm staying busy, staying busy, and helping coach at Ben Franklin, which I'm particularly proud of.
Yes.
Now I'm not sure if they claim me, Eric, but I claim them.
And of course, WHNO-TV, want to get that out there as well.
Yes, that's exactly right.
No doubt about it. Well, guys, the big story this week, again, Saints coming off a bye. Obviously, you got the situation with Tulane. We can talk about the Pelicans again on a little bit of a win streak, but it's about LSU and Les Miles. And again, it's and I mentioned this last week, it's hard to believe that just a few short weeks ago we were talking about national championship run for LSU, again, a playoff run for the Saints, and now that's kind of all fizzled away. But the talk this week has obviously been about Les Miles and his future. And Les, I'll start with you because the discussion has been all along this week about how LSU is handling this situation. There was a article in The Advocate by Scott Rabelais that pretty much laid out that Les Miles was done at the end of the season. Tommy Krysan of SportsNola.com came out with an article in which he laid the blame directly on Joe Oliva, the athletic director, for, again, feeding that information to Scott Rabelais. It just looks as though, again, from the boosters stepping up, saying they've got $15 million plus to be able to buy out Les Miles, to, again, the fact that Oliva has been mum and said nothing on this subject, that LSU has really not handled this well for a guy that's won a lot of games, but a guy also that's been a complete gentleman as far as his leadership at LSU. Your thoughts?
Well, if Les Miles had handled his football team and program the way the LSU administration has handled the last 2 weeks, they'd have a better case for firing him than they do have, because they've mishandled this every step of the way. All they had to do after the Arkansas game, or certainly after the Ole Miss game, if they wanted to wait, is just have Joe Oliva say, he doesn't even have to go in front of the cameras, put out a statement like everybody does. We're going to evaluate the program at the end of the season like we do every year, and it'd be inappropriate to comment beyond that because it'll take away from our game preparations. Leave it at that. It looks like you haven't made up your mind. You do whatever you got to do behind the scenes, but it leaves a path for you to keep the guy if you can't replace him with the person you want to replace him with. The way they've done it is they've made it totally untenable to bring him back. And they've hung him out to dry. They've made him go out there and talk multiple times. He's done all of his obligations. Nobody else has said anything, and the silence just tells everybody that he's gone, and it makes it virtually impossible to bring him back if they decide they can't get the replacement they want to get. So I think it's been botched from day one. And you're right. I mean, Les Miles has always been a class act, and whatever you want to say about his coaching, there haven't been many people I've covered who I respect as much as I do him for the way he's conducted himself and his job.
Yes, no doubt. Brian, your thoughts?
Yeah, it's hard to, I agree with everything you've said, Les. The thing that to me is the most alarming thing, if you will, is that and look, LSU is a top 10 program. It could be a top 8 program. It could be a top 5. It's all arguable, right? But when you're talking about a buyout for a college coach today of $15 million, another $3 million for his staff, then you're talking about adding additional money to hire someone. Here's what I'm thinking about all the time that's happened, and I couldn't agree with you more or less regarding the public relations. Just a black eye, okay? Just a horrible, horrible way they've handled it. But if I'm a tenured professor up there, and I understand, and I think it's done. In fact, I think he's already he knows where he stands, and it won't take long, okay, before he's gone on Sunday, if that long. But you're thinking about $15 million. Boy, I tell you, and I understand that the LSU's football program and sports in general pays a lot of bills.
Yes.
Okay, it carries the freight pretty well. But boy, I tell you what, it's gotten out of hand. It's really, really gotten out of hand. And Les has handled himself extremely well. If there was going to be a film or some kind of manuscript on how to deal with this kind of situation, he'd be it, okay? Because he's handled it with a lot of class, a lot of dignity, in a situation where I don't think any of us would blame him for like taking some pot shots. What I like about him particularly too is that he says it's not about me right now, okay? Now you can find fault with his coach, and that's that's why he's there, right? And that's why he's in this situation. But overall, it's a bad situation.
Yeah, they have not handled it well, and Oliva's not handled it well. And as I've mentioned, Oliva's on the hot seat as well, especially after this situation. We'll get into that a little bit later. But when you look at this right now, let's talk about the $15 million. It's $15 million to buy him out over 8 years. That was predicated on what happened when Jeff Long in Arkansas came a-calling a couple seasons ago, and Miles smartly said, look, I don't need any more money on my contract. Let's sweeten my buyout. Let's sweeten what's going to happen down the line. Give me a little bit more job security here. And also let's help my assistants. And of course, we saw the assistants get raises as well. And of course, the Les Miles clause is now in all their contracts. So $15 million there, another $2 million or so to be able to buy out the assistants. We've got people from around the country now saying, wait a minute, you've got an institution in LSU that's close to institutional bankruptcy. Matter of fact, they were ready to file it this year. How can you now justify coming up with $15 million or $17 million to buy out a coach? Now, we know that, first of all, LSU, the athletic program, gives money back to the university. One of the few universities, again, that is self-sufficient in terms of their athletic program and actually pays and helps on the academic side. We also know, again, that it's a handful of boosters now that have come together and have put this money together, so the money won't go from the university. From what I understand, the President, King Alexander, is very much against this because of what it looks like nationwide, saying you got a university that is basically on the brink of bankruptcy. At the same time, you're willing to buy out a football coach and his assistants for $17 million. How does that look for the university?
Well, I think it looks very bad, but I don't think the people who are pulling the levers here care. Okay, if they cared about something other than their delusional belief that LSU should be playing for a national championship every single year, then they would have a lot more respect for the program that they now have and for the person who's maintained it for the last 11 years. But they don't care. It's not up to their satisfaction at this point. They're willing to put their money on the line to make the change that they feel is necessary, and they figure if the university gets the right coach, they're going to have the success they want, and that's going to bring positive publicity to the university, and the ends will justify the means in their regard. So I think it's going to look terrible for the university, but the people who are instigating this, I don't think they care about that.
And that group hasn't changed. They've just waited for the right time to pounce.
True.
And this is the right time to pounce. And so, but that group, that who's ever pulling the strings, has not changed over the last few years.
Right. I heard our colleague Hebert talking a little bit about this situation. T-Bob Hebert on his show. Now, he's a former LSU player, and his discussion was that if you're willing to buy out a coach and assistants for $17 million, maybe you ought to match that and give that to the university as well. A lot of people around the country are feeling that way, saying, wait a minute, if you got an institution that's in close to bankruptcy, if you're getting rid of degree programs, if you're jettisoning professors, which again leads to the ability to not to get grants, which is the lifeblood of any university, maybe those individuals also should be looking at giving something to the academic side. Is that a fair assessment at this point, or is that?
I think it's a great point. I think it's unrealistic that will happen. I think it's a great point. I think it would be wonderful if they did it. It would be a great PR thing for them to do it. And it would also accomplish what they want to accomplish. I think T-Bob also tweeted a few days ago that as an alumnus, he was very disturbed by the fact that a university with the financial problems that it has is willing to spend that kind of money to buy out a football coach, to pay somebody not to work for the university.
Right.
So I think that would be the ideal solution, would be to come up with the money to have matching funds for the university itself as well as for the football program. But I don't see any way it happens.
Is that too much to ask? When you look at it just from the whole standpoint here, again, put a university that's on life support, but yet, again, boosters that are willing to put up $17 million to buy a football coach over 8 years.
Is it too much to ask of the group?
Of these boosters?
No, it's not too much to ask. Would they do it? No, they wouldn't do it. But we are talking about the very point that I guess I was trying to make earlier, is that in a state that has financial troubles, where education is ranked one of the last states in the country, we're not paying teachers, and we're not doing things. So when the average person in Louisiana, forget about the sports fan or the LSU fan, but when the average fan or person in Louisiana goes, how can they do this? How can they pay a staff $18 million to not do anything, to go away? If I'm the president of LSU, Joe Oliva is in my office immediately and going, how in the world could you negotiate this contract? Okay?
True.
How could you negotiate? And that's where his responsibility lies. Okay?
With that said, again, let's look at a little fast forward here, because one thing that I think all of us, will be a big shock if on Monday morning LSU comes out and announces that Les has one more year. There's been a lot of talk that, again, that Les went in a conversation with Oliva, asked for the opportunity to retire as LSU's head coach.
Right.
Give me one more year, we'll make any changes I need to make, and then let me go out on my own terms. Oliva, no, we're not going to go in that direction. So now they're stuck. They're in a situation where the cat's out the bag. Everyone knows that this is going to happen. Unfortunately, it is an embarrassment for the university and for Les Miles as well. But now you got to get your guy. I don't think you can have a coaching search. I don't think that's a possibility here. Okay, you cannot allow other coaches to leverage the university into getting them more money for their university and maybe lengthening their contracts. You better have your guy on Monday morning, or at the very least Tuesday morning, that you're going to introduce as the head coach, and it better be an upgrade. A lot of talk about Jimbo Fisher. His contract right now, $5 million. He's not making a lateral move, which means $6 or $7 million you have to give him. A $5 million buyout for Jimbo Fisher. So now all of a sudden that $18 million is like $23, $24 million before you get done on that. And then of course the additional money you'll have to pay him. Les, your thoughts on again making sure you have your guy in the wings that can take over this program and bring it to higher heights than Miles has done, and forget about the coaching search.
Well, you're absolutely right. This can't be a situation where you say, we have to get rid of him. Now, let's hire a headhunting firm and do a nationwide search. No. There can't be more than one or two names on your list, and you have to have one of them lined up before you pull the trigger. Okay, you have the third most successful coach in America over the last decade. Number one ain't leaving Alabama. Number two ain't leaving Ohio State. And you've got number three. So you've got to find somebody who you think is poised to ascend to number three or higher. Jimbo Fisher maybe is that guy. He's got ties to LSU. Mm-hmm. He's won a national championship. He rebuilt a major program. He's the guy who jumps out as being the one person who could probably do it, or at least would make sense as a hire. A lot of financial complications there, and as you pointed out, with them shooting down Miles's request and pretty much putting them out on a limb, Jimbo's agent, I'm sure, is just jacking the price up.
Jimmy Sexton, by the way.
Jimmy Sexton, Nick Saban's agent as well, is jacking the price up day by day. And the only other coach I could think of that's out there that I would even think has proven himself capable of handling the job would be David Shaw at Stanford. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure he would want to leave Stanford.
And he's an alum, isn't he? So I don't know if he's
I don't know
away
that
now.
he would go. He's the only guy I say has the resume to go after. Mm-hmm. And he might not want to take it either. But they have to have their guy, one of the top two or three people out there. They have to have him lined up before they ever pull the trigger. And if they don't, it's going to be a bigger embarrassment than it already is.
Yeah, it's imperative that they do, Les, because one, they're going to have to name an interim to probably coach the bowl game, all right? Mm-hmm. Somebody off their staff. And then two, I've already seen one or two decommit.
Oh, yes.
And so it's important that they do get someone in place, because this is a crazy time right now, this next 30 days after the season ends and stuff like that. So they do. And if the only thing worse than how they've handled it would be if Jimbo Fisher, for some reason, isn't in their pecking their short list, okay? But Joe better have a short list, and I'm sure he does.
Well,
okay,
it better be a short list of one.
Of one,
okay?
Yeah, right?
I mean,
no, it really.
It better be already. Jimmy, we got it done. But the deal is done. It's just a matter of him going to his players after the end of the season and saying, "Look, it's been great. I'm moving on to LSU." It's got to be one of those situations. It can't be, we're going to come back to you now and let's try to negotiate a little bit more. It's got to be already signed on the dotted line at this point.
Yeah, this is like it's an equilateral move. You can't. It's a 1-1A. Okay,
Right.
There's the faction that wants him out will be happy that he's out, but that faction won't be happy unless they get a real sexy splash.
And one other thing, real quick, is it's awful presumptuous of LSU people to think Jimbo Fisher's just going to leap at the LSU job.
Right.
He's making more money than Les Miles.
Yes, he is.
He's already proven he can rebuild this program. He's done the heavy lifting, won a national championship, and it's a lot easier to get into the college football playoff going through the ACC than it is the SEC. He's seen how Miles has been handled. So unless there are extenuating circumstances we're not aware of, I think he's going to think long and hard before he makes that jump, because he has a great situation. And people don't want to hear this around here, but it may be a better situation than LSU can offer him.
Brian, I think he's right on, because I think arguably when you look at the road to the national championship, it's a lot easier in the ACC and Florida State than it is going through the SEC West and Alabama.
It's the reason he's going to have to butt heads with Nick Saban, at least for the foreseeable future, right? It's true, and it's the reason that Les Miles is gone, or going to be gone, is because he hasn't beaten Alabama. So, but I still think, Les, I kind of disagree with you that I still think LSU is an improvement for Jimbo. Okay, I think that program and the SEC, just from the notoriety, and this is the best conference. So if you see yourself as the top, okay, I mean, he's already in that top 5 for sure, arguably. But if you see yourself as a step up, this would be a great situation to come into.
Let me read some stats to you guys. 110-31 in his career at LSU. Let's look at it just since 2011. He's lost 5 straight to Alabama, Nick Saban. Again, you look at the SEC record, 19-12, could be 19-13 or 20-12 coming up this week against A&M. That's again since going undefeated in 2011. He's lost 3 of his last 4 bowl games since the 2011 BCS championship to Alabama, including again when you look at the bowl games, I believe it was the Music City Bowl and the Chick-fil-A Bowl, both losses for this team. He's put 64 players that have been drafted into the NFL. Again, he has more players right now currently in the NFL that came from LSU than any other program. Is it warranted to be able to fire him, considering where the program has been since 2011?
That's where it gets a little bit complicated. Absolutely, you can make a case, given the expectations of the program, the heights to which he took it on top of what Nick Saban had built previously, and where it's been these last 2 or 3 years. You can make a case that his time is past, we need to move on. It gets a lot more complicated when you try and find the person you're confident will be able to maintain what he has done or restore that glory in the short term. That's where it gets complicated, and that's where we get to the discussion about it being a short list. You brought up the players in the NFL. That's the thing I think is so overlooked in this, is how many guys have gone to the NFL early. 2013 NFL draft, if I'm not mistaken, he had 11 players drafted. They may have all been underclassmen. And they send 6, 7, 8 underclassmen every year.
Every year.
Nobody, not even Nick Saban, can send that many underclassmen to the NFL in a series of years and not fall off just by recruiting. You can't replace them on an annual basis. You're going to drop off a little bit, and then you're going to rebuild. And that's a major factor in what they've fallen off. He didn't just forget how to coach, okay? Maybe his time has passed, but let's take a look at some of the reasons why. I think that's the biggest overlooked reason in what's happened recently. I
agree with you totally regarding the NFL players, the players that he's lost and has not been able to reload. I mean, he's got some talented young guys, but they're getting beat by talented older guys, okay, around the SEC, Alabama being thing. Nick Saban's done a great job of generally keeping guys into their 4th year. He loses some juniors, okay, but he keeps some guys, okay. There are some football, I think, some blunders that Les is certainly guilty of, okay. I think bringing Cam Cameron on and not being able to find a quarterback to play today's football has been a major gaffe for them, and how they can't find a quarterback in today's high school stage is beyond me. They've got the quarterback that they bring in doesn't even fit their system, for one, but they do a great job getting skilled people, but they can't find that quarterback. And look, Les, one of his downfalls, again, I think Les is still playing old school football, and that's good. It's done him well.
Yes.
But it is time to move on.
I think the problem with the Cameron thing is he knew he had to make the change with Studrawa.
Yeah.
But he couldn't cut the cord. He couldn't say, I'm going to go full bore 21st century and get a guy who runs the spread offense. He said, I'm going to get a friend of mine who's old school, who I trust, who can nudge me a little bit closer to where we're supposed to be without me really leaving my comfort zone.
And also a guy that, again, the reputation was a guy that trains quarterbacks.
Right.
Okay? I mean, Mettenberger, it worked.
Absolutely.
Okay? You can't say Mettenberger didn't get better under Cameron. But the others, that leaves a little bit to be desired.
And look, Cam, there's a reason why he left the Baltimore Ravens that year, too.
Right.
Okay? I mean, it is. And here's the thing that concerns or bothers me. Disturbing if I'm an LSU booster fan. Leonard Fournette may be one of the greatest running backs that this state will ever have produced, right? And I think somehow it's going to be wasted. I really do. And not just the three games. They have got to take advantage of this guy's skills somehow, blend it in, and make it work over the however long he's only going to be one more year. Here.
What's your thought on the Fournette situation? Because again, didn't really utilize it maybe as they should have last year. They run into the SEC juggernaut in November, and all of a sudden, obviously, the inability for the offensive line to open up a crease for him, just a crease. But again, not helping him. The offensive philosophy of we're gonna take our big guys and we're gonna beat your big guys, and we got our back, and we're gonna win. We're gonna win the war at the line of scrimmage has not worked. Because again, SEC teams are too fast on defense. In a lot of cases, you go up against the Alabamas and the Arkansas, they're just as big as you.
Well, I think part of the problem that hurt this team, and the reason why this deteriorated so fast, is we all got misled by that 7-0 start. This was not one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the country. Right. Their schedule was backloaded.
Yes.
Until Alabama, they didn't really play anybody. Auburn was nobody. Florida was okay. And I think that ties into the Fournette thing. He piled up all these yards, and it looked like they had this dominant offensive line because they weren't playing anybody. They played Alabama, and Nick Saban said, Fournette is not going to stop me. I don't care if I have to put 11 people on the line of scrimmage. He is not going to beat me because they have nobody else who can take advantage of the way I'm going to play defense. And they were exposed. Arkansas had the same type of physicality. Piggybacked onto that, and even Ole Miss was able to have some success with that. So I think there was a false sense of security about how good this team was and how dominant the running game could be because they didn't play anybody till November.
I bought into it as well.
And I think piggybacking that, I agree totally with you, Les, is that they turned and handed the ball to Leonard Fournette against bad teams, against mediocre teams, against okay teams. Okay, I mean, Florida's won, 10, 11 games. I mean, they're a solid team. But what they didn't do, and this is where I think that Les is at fault because he's the captain of the ship, is that they didn't bring Brandon Harris along. There's a reason why Alabama and Arkansas and Ole Miss can stuff Fournette is because they're going, you know what, we stopped Fournette, we're going to make Brandon beat us. And Brandon's not going to beat you because he's fool's gold. He really hasn't progressed, and that's that whole maturation. It hasn't happened under Cam Cameron.
But they haven't helped him because, again, they haven't utilized his skill set. He is a much better player on the move than he is in the pocket.
Right.
His mechanics are horrible in the pocket.
Yeah.
Something when you look at Cam Cameron, you would have thought he would have fixed that by now. He's had him long enough. And again, especially in bad weather, when he has someone that is at his feet, he cannot deliver the ball with accuracy. And it leads me really to my next point. Is the downfall of Les Miles at LSU the fact that he never could really get a quarterback to? He's had wide receivers, he's had running backs. You look at all the skill positions on the offensive side, he's had great offensive lines. It's been the quarterback that's been the Achilles heel for Les Miles. Is that really, at the end of the day, what is going to do Les Miles in?
Yeah, I think so, because if you look at the last 3 years, it all started with the BCS title game when they had one of the worst offensive performances in college football history, and they couldn't do anything about it. Whether you changed quarterbacks, it wouldn't have mattered anyway. They still weren't going to do it. And since then, the quarterback has continued to be an issue. And the interesting thing is, the most success he had was with the least ballyhooed quarterbacks.
Right.
He won the championship with Matt Flynn as his quarterback.
Game managers.
Yeah, game managers. Played the way he was comfortable with. And now he's never been able to get that person he was totally comfortable with or who had the combination of the talent and the trust from the head coach that they needed. And then by bringing in Cameron, they got caught in this twilight zone between trying to be a little more sophisticated than they've been while still being the Michigan offense that Les Miles wants to run. And the quarterback is stuck in the middle, and they never were able to fit all those pieces together properly. And I think that's going to be, ultimately, that'll be the downfall. And one thing I will say is, I've said this before the heat was turned up on him, going back 4 or 5 years, he is exactly like Charlie McClendon. He will be much better thought of the farther we get away from his tenure. Because when other people come in and they lose to Nick Saban more often, and they take a dip and they don't win as much, and they look back on those 11 years, they're going to say, boy, we had it pretty good.
And you know what? And Les will end up at a good. He'll end up with another job if he wants it. I mean, because of the very things that we have discussed. Okay, but Brandon Harris, I'm going to go back to Brandon because I think he's really one of the crux of this major problem. I really do. But we've overlooked the other side of the ball too.
Oh, yes.
Okay, the defense is just as guilty as the offense,
especially this year.
Yeah, and you know what? There was a troubling sign in those 7 games, and you guys remember this. They were still giving up 3-4 touchdowns a game against, just average competition.
Right.
Now they might have gotten complacent, but and there was so much reliancy on Leonard Fournette that when we are in trouble, what do? We turn and hand the ball or pitch the ball to Leonard, and everything will be fine.
Well, the pitching part is probably the downfall of Leonard Fournette. You want him going north-south. You don't want him going east-west. And again, it'll make you pull your hair out watching on Saturday nights.
That 4th down play, okay, inside at the 5-yard line, I think will be one of the plays that we'll remember in Les's career here, Les's legacy.
That'll be the Aaron Brooks pass to Wayne Gandy.
Yes,
that is a definitive picture.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And one thing real quick about Texas A&M, funny thing this week is the happiest person this week has to be John
there's no
Chavis.
doubt.
Not because of any bad feelings toward Les
right.
Miles. He was going to be the center of attention. The lawsuit guys coming back to Tiger Stadium.
You're right.
And now he's just a footnote because of all this other stuff, and he hates being in the spotlight.
Right.
John Chavis is so relieved that this isn't about him.
But speaking of John Chavis, of course, it has reared its ugly head this week, and the fact that it's been ranted about that he wanted to stay, but it was a lever that kind of forced him out and put the defense in the situation that it's in now. And Brian, to your point, both your points. You made the point about losing so many juniors to the NFL. That's where it got hurt more than anything else, is on the defensive side of the ball. You lost so many players over the last few years that if they would have just stayed 4 years, this defense would have never lost a beat. And now you've got a young defense that's trying to find its way under a new defensive coordinator.
Yeah, you had a lot of guys they're finesse linemen, okay? There are a lot of young and finesse type linemen that just, when you play a physical brand of ball, as they have the last few games, you get pushed around a lot. And they're young guys. They're still learning.
Guys, also, you mentioned the #1 recruiting class. Felipe Franks is already decommitted. They're getting decommitted. Guys are decommitting every day. I think we'll see this. That's another reason why I really feel that if you made this move, you better have your guy in waiting, and he better be someone that, again, can re-attract these players back to LSU, or at least has been recruiting players where he has been. So, again, you can try to salvage this class.
I find that Jimbo Fisher's, I think the comment was no comment, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. No comment.
So that speaks volumes.
Sure.
All right.
Also, I think they have to retain Frank Wilson and or Ed Orgeron for recruiting sake. I know Orgeron's name has said something about Syracuse.
About Syracuse, yes. What about Frank Wilson? What about Corey Raymond? Because that's my next question. Those are the 3 guys that are really involved in bringing these players to LSU, especially Wilson and Raymond, who, again, preceded Orgeron coming to LSU.
Well, I think what you do is you say we're keeping the assistant coaching staff intact, and we'll let the new coach decide who he wants to keep. And I think in about a New York second, Jimbo is going to identify the key recruiting pieces, and he's going to keep them as best he can.
He'll need to.
Yeah, they have to keep at least one of those guys, if not more than one.
I would agree. Now Corey Raymond, maybe as a defensive back coach, maybe that you don't go in that direction anymore. Maybe you put him along the lines of, again, assistant recruiting coordinator. Maybe you take Frank Wilson, you put him as assistant head coach, and maybe elevate him, because the last thing you want to do is put Wilson, Raymond, and Orgeron out there for other programs to come in and snatch. How horrible would it be if you wake up on Tuesday and Frank Wilson is going to Alabama with, to go work for Nick Saban?
You just ruined Thanksgiving for so many people out there.
I mean, honestly, that's a horrible thought. But
you got to leave that to the new coach. But you got to settle it as quickly as possible.
And you name Ed. I would name Ed the interim coach. Okay, absolutely. And let him take over the bowl game.
Guys, final question before we go to our break: is it justified for Les Miles to be let go? All the drama we've seen around it. Looking at the record since 2011, look at his overall record. Is it justified for LSU to let this coach go?
Only if they are able to get an elite replacement, which is at this point I think is probably Jimbo Fisher. If you can make that move yes, you can make the case. And so what I'm saying is, yes, you can make the case for removing him, but you don't do it unless you can hit a home run with his replacement.
And everything, there's so much to be said about no comment, or the fact that Joe Oliva isn't saying really anything. Okay, it certainly is not a good reflection on Les Miles. It doesn't do him any good at all. But you're right, Les. Unless they hit it out of the park with their replacement or their successor for Les, then it's a bad decision. Okay. That said, okay, if you just separate that part, and I don't think you can, but is it time for Les for a change? Yes, I think it is. I think all the football aspects of it, it is a time for Les, a time for the change, the head football coach at LSU.
Yeah, I would agree. And as I mentioned on my radio show, anybody that watches this show, I'm not a Johnny-come-lately on this. I mentioned last year at the end of the season that I thought that Monty Williams, who again is gone, Sean Payton, Les Miles, and C.J. Johnson would all be on the clock this season, and we could see a clean sweep of new coaches if, again, those programs didn't turn around. And we quite frankly could see that before the calendar turns into 2016 going forward. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports each and every Thursday night right here on WLAE at 6 p.m. Every Friday night, you catch us on Pelican Sports Television in the New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette markets at 9 p.m. and right back here on WLAE at 10 p.m. Got a great panel for you tonight. Brian Ali Walsh of SportsNool.com, Les East of the Advocate. When we come back, we'll talk a little New Orleans Saints. My name is Eric Asher. Stick around.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters, as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile. WLAE is currently looking for partners to underwrite this program and other programs on our station. Underwriting on WLAE is affordable, brings exposure to your cause or company, and helps support our nonprofit mission of providing television programs that educate, inform, and inspire the viewers of Greater New Orleans and Southeast Louisiana. If you are interested in learning about program underwriting on WLAE, please contact us at 504-830-3703.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hope you and the family have enjoyed your Thanksgiving dinner, and of course, hope you're enjoying the conversation tonight. Brian Ali Walsh of SportsNool.com, Les East of the Advocate are our guests tonight. Guys, to switch to the New Orleans Saints 4-6. Look, I talked about it last week. I don't want to belabor the point, but I just think it shows you the culture of the New Orleans Saints these days. The fact that the Saints are 4-6, and Sean Payton gives everybody the week off. He goes to Malibu to visit his daughter. Again, himself, his girlfriend, and another couple. I could go back to Jim Mora. I go back to the old Sean Payton. I could see a guy that maybe was engaged once as an owner in Tom Benson. This does not fly, okay, unless, again, you have lack of institutional control there. You know, they come back and again, they claim that they're fresh, that they're healed up. Obviously, in between there, you also had the firing of Rob Ryan and the naming of Dennis Allen as the new defensive coordinator. I just think it's a mess at Airline Drive right now with, again, 6 games to go and, just hanging on the possibility of playoffs by a thread. Brian, why don't you take it first?
Well, that's a mouthful.
Ooh.
A lot of self-scouting going on, I understand.
At least that's what they say.
To take a week off, to leave your post, if you will, and to catch your breath, I'll buy all that. Okay, I'll buy all that. I understand all that. But hopefully someone's back here breaking down tape and looking for tendencies and trying to improve. I gotta believe that they just didn't all just leave the film room or the tape room. Okay, somebody's doing this. you know, Peyton, when Peyton first came on board, they went 0-3 on the games after the bye week.
Yes.
Okay, they were 0-3. He talked to Andy Reid. Andy Reid says, you know what, switch it. You know, let your team get away from it, collect itself, heal mentally and physically. You do the same thing. But in all those years, and then now they're 4-4 under Sean, and they actually won the year that he sat out in 12. So they're 5-4 in the next, you know, over the 9 years here. But what Sean did was he still hung around, okay, and they still broke down stuff, and they still, you know, they're trying to get better, coaching up and stuff like that. So we'll see. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, ultimately, it's probably not going to make much of a difference in their one-loss record. But there's a perception out there, and I think with some justification, that Sean Payton does not have the fire that he once had as a younger head coach. And maybe it was a Super Bowl win, maybe it was a suspension, maybe it was things in his personal life, probably some combination of all of those. But the younger Sean Payton, if he went into it and bye week at 4-6, coming off one of the most miserable defensive performances and an offensive performance that wasn't much better, he would have been in that office 16, 18 hours a day trying to fix it. Okay, they got rid of Rob Ryan. He's the guy we're going to make the fall guy for this.
Scapegoat.
Okay, that's fine. But that doesn't fix it. And you're not going to fix it until you get better players. But still, it would eat at him, that last performance, and he would do everything possible to make sure they came out of the bye week with as good a performance as he could muster. It just doesn't look like he cares that much. Fairly or unfairly, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, the perception angle is absolutely accurate, Les. And it, excuse me, it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Can we presume? I don't know, you know, can you presume?
I can every day on the radio.
I mean, you know, it does make you wonder if he knows what fate belies him in 6 weeks. So you know, all of that speculation, which has hounded him, and he's done a great job of keeping it at arm's length. He's happy here. They're building a home and blah blah blah. So you know that speculation has been around for the last really a couple of years and stuff like that. And look, I don't think any of us would be foolish to think that it wouldn't surprise any of us if at the end of the season, give or take a month, where there's a change.
Yes.
Okay, and look, I don't think he'll be fired. I do not think he'll be fired.
I don't either.
Do I think he'll be here next season? I can make a case to where he won't.
Yeah.
I think he will be told, if you want to look around, you have that prerogative, with the hope that somebody wants him badly enough to pony up a couple of number one draft
that's
choices.
it. Get the best deal you can.
And you come up with a solution that's satisfactory to all three parties.
Yeah, I agree. Get the best deal you can, and then at that point, we discuss it. You got the mediation situation that's going on in Texas right now between the LeBlancs and the Bensons. You got the mediation process that'll be going on here in New Orleans, which will be about the clubs. That can happen at any point. That may come to fruition at some point next season, where there could be a changing in the guard. And I think that Peyton sees that on the horizon as well. But I mean, again, I think it comes down to I don't think he'll be fired. I do think that he will have a chance to go out and shop himself. And, we've heard all kind of rumors, whether it's Miami, Indianapolis, whatever it's going to be, whatever it is, it is. But, again, I'm like you, Les. I think since 2012, since the suspension, he's not the same guy. Whether it's the personal issues, whether it's coming back and believing that he could just restart this thing, there was a disconnect. Bad moves in terms of free agents, bringing those in. Again, rewarding your own players, them not living up to it. And the atrocious drafts have caught up to this team. And now you're in a situation where, again, it's a lot easier, in my opinion, for Sean Payton to walk away and go to the next job as the Super Bowl winning coach of the New Orleans Saints, rather than coming here and trying to clean up the baggage that's left here in New Orleans.
Well, it's a difficult thing to do. I mean, it is hard to maintain a dynasty. There's only one team that's been able to do it in the 2000s, and that's Bill Belichick in New England. I mean, they've done an outstanding job. But, since 2009, really, okay, now they've had some success over the last few years, but not sustained success, and that's what they have prided themselves on, is that they want to be mentioned among the 8 to 10 franchises every year a franchise that can compete every year for the Super Bowl. And this franchise is not in that situation right now. And I promise you, regardless of what you think about Tom Benson, his state of mind and everything like that, I promise you it's eating at him. And this does not sit well with him. And I don't think it sits well with Peyton at all either. But they have not done a good job of managing their salary cap, and that begins with Mickey Loomis. But it doesn't, you got to lay blame at Sean Payton too, because he's involved with the personnel decisions. So, there's a lot of blame here, and it's equally shared.
Anything you can add?
Well, I just think to continue our downer on Thanksgiving, I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, regardless of what happens with Peyton, because of the salary cap issues, and you can see the end of Drew Brees' career is not that far off. I'm not saying necessarily in the next year or so, but it's coming. And I think it's going to be very difficult and time-consuming to get this thing back headed in an upward trajectory. Les and Eric, for a brilliant offensive mind, and I don't think we would disagree with that.
No
I mean,
doubt.
the guy's a great, he's an outstanding play caller and schemer when it comes to the offensive side of the football. But for some reason, he's had a really, like Les Miles and quarterbacks, Sean cannot get himself associated with a stable defensive coordinator. He's into his fourth now or fifth with Dennis, right? Counting Dennis. And I think Dennis is an excellent coach, and I hope he succeeds. But for some reason, he's had trouble latching onto somebody that he can just give that side of the ball. Greg Williams did a good job, but it also showed that you've got to pay close attention to this. So.
But wasn't this a dysfunctional marriage from jump to bring in Dennis Allen?
Absolutely.
While you have Rob Ryan.
And Eric, he explained that a little bit in today's press conference about why he would bring Dennis, and I understand that. Dennis is an outstanding coach who can bring a lot to the table. But and I think in hindsight, is easy, right? He probably should have cut bait with Rex Ryan and just at the end of last season and brought Dennis in and just made him the coordinator.
Well, and this gets back to Peyton not being the same guy. If you remember what he did with Gary Gibbs, that ain't good enough. We're moving on.
That's right.
He gave
Spagnuolo
1 year, and he wasn't even around for the year.
That's right.
He said, "That's it."
Yeah.
He walked in the door and fired him.
Yeah, he said, "I'm back. I want to win. You're out of here."
And really,
so why last year doesn't he just say, "I got Dennis Allen right here, a guy I really respect, and with good reason, a good defensive coach." Why did he try and put together this shotgun wedding that made no sense? We talked about this on the show when I was on a few weeks ago. Why didn't he just bring in Dennis Allen during the offseason instead of making Rob Ryan operate with his successor looking over his shoulder the whole time? That was an untenable situation.
And to ask Rob to simplify things. Okay, now what he was doing was probably wrong, but he was asking, all right, now I want you to simplify things. Well, he did. Well, it's like asking Rob to cut his hair.
Right.
Okay, that's not who he
Well,
is.
but also, listen, if you listen to Rob Ryan and you read between the lines, he pretty much said in training camp, I'm running Sean Payton's defense. I'm running what Sean Payton wants me to run. And again, so
it's
that
probably why he's sticking around, why he stayed around. Okay?
No doubt, probably so. And look, his son was a senior at Newman.
Right.
They probably didn't want to uproot the son. He even mentioned that on NFL Network this week when he made the ridiculous comments about Katrina, which again was just horrendous to make those comments. But at the same time, I kind of maybe you feel for your coach. You don't want to have to jettison him and then all of that. But look, at the end of the day, he kind of put this team in the position it's in because he has two guys. You can't serve two masters, okay? And I think that maybe the defense at time was like that. But guys, it comes down to talent and the lack of. Once this team got injured and they had to start bringing guys off the street to be able to play linebacker for them, it was it. It was done. They were exposed. And that goes back to, again, the evaluation of talent. And we've talked about it less in the past. If you want to look at maybe what the downfall of Sean Payton will be here in New Orleans it was, again, the fact that he truly didn't have someone that was a player personnel director or a true general manager that could sit down with him and go, this is what we need. Instead, it was kind of scattershot in terms of the drafts, and we've seen the results.
Yeah, absolutely. And one quick thing about simplifying it under Rob Ryan. You ask any observer of the NFL what do you think of when you think of a Rob Ryan defense? Oh, you think of the 11 guys all
Right.
over the place. They're standing up. They're moving around. Nobody knows who to
Bringing
block. They
pressure
don't know where
left,
they're coming
right,
from.
everywhere, right.
It's the most unsimple scheme in the NFL. So he asked him, stop doing the one thing that's been your trademark that you've been good at. So that made no sense.
You know, unless I think you guys have hit on it. In my opinion, is that go to the salary cap. And look, every good club has got to have a good quarterback. I mean, this is a quarterback-driven league, but they have not done a good job working with Drew's salary. Okay, it is really hamstrung
Yes, it
them.
has.
Okay, and they have not really responded and dealt with it very well over the last few years.
And then also, again,
Just my opinion.
Rewarding
Just my opinion.
players that ultimately don't work out, your own players. Maybe hedging your bets a little bit and rewarding a guy like Junior Gillette when you really shouldn't have. Again, giving Cam Jordan, even this year, the money that he got and him not performing as well. They've missed there. And then, of course, free agents as well. And it was good to read this week that a lot of the free agents that are going to be getting this big money, a lot of that is tied to, again, performance bonuses. They might not be making as much as they thought we were making when they got here. So, again, we'll see what happens there. But again, it is about the evaluation of talent, and at some point there's been a disconnect, and a lot of that has to do, as you mentioned, with Drew's salary, but also they have not done a good job of, again, evaluating talent and rewarding that talent and bringing it in. With that said, how much is Rob Ryan responsible for what we're seeing?
Oh, he didn't help. Okay, I don't think he did a great job. I don't think getting rid of him solves the problem. There's not enough talent on that defense. I think Dennis Allen's a good coach. I think they will play better, at least initially, under Dennis Allen. I don't know if they can sustain it the rest of the year because there's not enough talent there. I think if they'd gotten rid of Rob Ryan in the offseason, like we talked about, that might have helped the defense a little bit. But ultimately, that was a problem that needed to be fixed, but in the grand scheme of things, Rob Ryan wasn't nearly their biggest problem. And it gets down to, as we've talked about, personnel evaluation and handling of the cap have both been subpar for several years now, even though both were outstanding earlier in the
they really
tenure.
were.
What's that old saying, a leopard doesn't change his spots? Look at Rob Ryan's track record. It's 2-3 years, and he's gone.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. They were the fourth-ranked defense in 13. They were horrible last year, and they're horrible this year. And that kind of has been his MO. Look, I'm telling you, Spagnuolo was a good coordinator, okay, and they cut him dry after 1 year. They brought in Rob here, and they just haven't been able to make that adjustment. But look, the players are to blame here as well. Okay, I mean, George Bird, they paid him $54 million over 6 years. He hadn't justified anything. He can't get on the field. Donnell Ellerbe, probably a pretty good player, can't stay on the field. Keenan Lewis now he's
Often injured now.
He's often injured, so they can't keep these. And these guys have got to be healthy and be on the field.
Right.
So,
Which brings me to a player that I think everyone is kind of shaking their head at.
I know.
Brandon Browner. First of all, again, you kind of knew what you were getting when you brought him
Yes.
in. I think it was a knee-jerk reaction to the loss of so many veteran players and leadership in the locker room.
Right.
But you knew who he was. If you don't play a defense that's conducive to his skill set, well, then you're asking for trouble. To me, the last straw was the cheap shot on the Washington Redskins lineman when you have a chance to be able to tackle the running back on the screen. It was 14-14, guys. This game was not out of reach. It wasn't one of these things where you're getting blown out and now you're going to take a personal shot at somebody. You were in the game. The old Peyton walks in and cuts Brandon Browner.
You know, and I'll go one step further, and I wrote about it for SportsNola.com, and it kind of just got washed over. Look, I think Drew Brees is an outstanding, classy person, okay? But, boy, it takes a lot of galls, all right? That's okay to say on TV.
Absolutely.
A lot of galls for him to wave off the punting unit and leave his head coach with mouth agape and stay on the field, okay? I mean, you just don't do that. I'm sorry, gentlemen, you just don't do that. That was not, and you know who's that a bad reflection of? Sean Payton.
Oh, no doubt.
Okay, so that speaks to what you're saying.
Drew wouldn't have done that.
No
way.
In 2011
Absolutely.
or prior to that.
Absolutely.
He
No
wouldn't
way.
have done it.
Brandon Browner.
It was a organization desperate for upgrades on the defense that had its hands tied, and they rolled the dice and they got snake eyes.
And you're looking at a guy who's been in 2 Super Bowls, won one, and bringing leadership into the locker room and onto the field. But he is what he is, and he's what we're seeing is what he has done the last few years. So.
Well, guys, let's end on a high note. Since again, no, seriously, it's the state of sports
Happy
around
Thanksgiving.
here. Ben Simmons, okay?
Ooh.
Ben Simmons. If you have not seen Ben Simmons play for LSU yet, and again, forget about the 2 games they lost in New York. This guy is the second coming of Magic Johnson. I kind of compared him when you talk about LSU lore of the passing and the vision of Pete Maravich and the ability to dominate the goal like Shaquille O'Neal. You've had a chance to see him. Talk about Ben Simmons.
Oh, he's incredible. And look, if you haven't had a chance, you better make sure you see him because he won't be around after this season. No, he is incredible. He can lead a fast break. He's Magic. He's all those. He's Kobe. He's everybody. He's LeBron. And he's a young guy, and he's only going to get better. I haven't seen a player like him at LSU, and he's much different than Shaq or John Williams or those kind of people. But he's got the ability to push a button and take it to the next level. And there's not many guys at the college level. He's a preseason All-American as a freshman. It doesn't happen very often, but he does. You can see that motor in his head that's moving, and he understands the game so well at a young age. He's fun to watch. Right. He's a great player already.
Very unselfish too.
Yes. Yeah, and I was going to ask Brian because you covered the team back when they had Shaq and Stanley Roberts. And he's a different type of player, but the buzz reminds me of Chris Jackson. Who probably doesn't have as many skills as Ben does. But when he came on board, it was like, this is the biggest thing since Pete Maravich.
Right, and then the thing that Ben needs to do, though, he does need to find a mid-range jumper.
Yes.
Okay, and then that'll be the thing. If there's an albatross or something that's,
there's a weakness in his game.
That's it. Okay, that is it.
Right.
And so we'll see what happens. But boy, I tell you what, he's going to be something special.
Yeah, and there is a buzz around Baton Rouge about him right now, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. And in fact, at one point, the whole thing was Fournette and Simmons.
Oh, absolutely.
Together. What a wonderful combination.
And that was just a month ago.
Yes.
Yeah. And not just great players, but apparently great people.
Great people.
Yes.
And there's so much excitement about that. And there's no less excitement about Leonard Fournette. It's just about the team as a whole. And, the joke around Baton Rouge now is that, LSU's a basketball school now. And for so long it was either football or baseball, and right now it's the basketball team that's got people excited.
You brought up a great point off air. We were talking about his Ben's parents are in Baton Rouge, and I think that speaks well. I mean, it does. Sure. It just it says a lot about the young man.
Yeah, it does. And look, again, hopefully he'll stick around for 2. More than likely he doesn't. So get out there and watch Ben Simmons play. I've seen every game he's been on TV so far. I'll continue to watch because, again, you're watching one of the future NBA greats.
And Eric, he's got a lot of good players around him as well.
Okay,
there's a lot of good young players.
And I also caution the fan base: don't get too down right now. Judge this team in February. Don't judge this team now. This is a young team trying to find its way. Les East of the Advocate, Brian Ellie Walsh of SportsNolan.com. Thanks for being on our panel tonight. Happy Thanksgiving to both of you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks so much for watching. Remember, there is a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE at 10 p.m. Also on Pelican Sports Television and the New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette markets at 9 p.m. You can catch me on the radio weekdays, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m., 9:90 a.m. WGSO. You can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. You can catch all the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports at ericasher.com as well. And if you can't get the WGSO signal, I want you to go ahead down and download the TuneIn Radio app. Great way to be able to take the show with you anywhere. Again, special thanks to our guests, Brian Ellie Walsh, and also Les East. Also to the WLE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, Kenny Juno, and subbing and directing tonight, doing a great job, Naila Jones. Thanks so much for watching. Happy Thanksgiving to one and all. We'll see you right back here next Thursday night for Inside New Orleans Sports.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.